Chapter 9 The Last Night. Annie chased Jack around the circle. "Stop, Jack!" she cried. "Stop!" She grabbed his shirt and tried to pull him out of the dance. "Let go, Annie," he said. "Leave me alone." But Annie wouldn't let go. Finally, she pulled so hard that Jack broke hands with the dancer and tumbled backward into the grass. The winged dancer didn't seem to notice. They closed their circle and kept going around and around. "Why did you do that?" Jack said, sitting up. "I was having fun." "Look at the night," said Annie. "See them?" Jack still couldn't see. The world was spinning before his eyes. He had to get back into the dance. "Here, I found your glasses," said Annie. "Put them on." Jack put on his glasses. He peered at the circle of dancers. He caught sight of armor gleaming in the sunlight. He saw 3 knights dancing in a row. 2 of them looked very young. The third looked much older. As they came closer, Jack saw their face. All the joy of the music drained out of him. The knight looked tired and sick. Their hairs and beards were long and scary. Their faces were bony and pale. Their eyes stared wildly, and their lips were frozen in ghostly smiles. "What's wrong with them?" asked Jack. "Can't stop dancing," said Annie. "They're dancing themselves to death." "They must be a lost knight from Camelot," said Jack. "We have to save them," said Annie. "Yeah," said Jack. He tried to clear his mind and think. "What about this? We get back in the dance and we take places between the dancer and the knight." "Yes, then we can pull the knight out of the circle," said Annie. "Wait," said Jack. "What if I can't stop dancing again?" "Just don't let yourself get caught by the music," said Annie. "You have to think about something else. Think about why we're here. Think about Morgan." "Okay," said Jack. "I'll try." Jack and Danny perched in the grass. They watched and waited as the night danced closer and closer and closer. "Now!" shouted Annie. Jack and Danny rushed forward. They broke into the circles and on either side of the night. As Jack started dancing, his feet seemed to fly to the beat of the drum. He felt a wave of great joy. His worry left him. "Now, Jack!" cried Annie. "Pull away!" But Jack didn't want to pull away. The music rang in his ears. Nothing mattered except the dancing. "Jack, pull away now!" Annie shouted again. Jack shook his head, trying to shake off Annie's voice. "Morgan! Morgan!" Annie yelled. The word Morgan made Jack tremble the beat in the dance. "Morgan! Morgan!" Annie shouted. Jack trembled again. Then he used all his might to stop himself from dancing. He let go of the hands of the dancer on his right and threw himself out of the dance, pulling the knights on his left with him. Annie and the other 2 knights tumbled back with them onto the grass. Just as before, the dancer didn't seem to notice. They closed their circle and kept going round and round in their joyless, timeless dance. Chapter 10 A Knight's Gift. The 3 knights lay in the grass, fighting for breath. "The dance! We must stop! Stop dancing!" gasped the other knight. "You have to! We pulled you away," said Annie. The knight looked up at her and Jack. He had a rough, craggy face. Who are you?" he asked in a hoarse voice. "Friends," said Annie. She spoke loudly to be heard over the music. "We came from King Arthur's castle. We're on a quest," said Jack, "to get the water of memory and imagination." "To save Camelot," said Annie. Camelot, whispered the knight. We come from Camelot. I don't recognize you. We're just visiting, said Annie, but we know all about you. You're Sir Lancelot, aren't you? Yes, breathed the knight. And Sir Percival and the Sir Galahad, said Jack. Yes, my son, Galahad, said the knight. King Arthur think you are lost forever, said Annie. King Lancelot closed his eyes. The dance, he said. It made us forget. I know, said Jack. The dancer must be the keeper of the cauldron. You can't get past them without getting caught up in their dance. Father, we must find the water. Sir Galahad tried to sit up, but he was too early. He lay back in the grass. That's okay, we're here now, said Annie. You should all rest. Sir Galahad closed his eyes. Yeah, don't worry, said Jack. Annie and I will find the magic water for Camelot. But you're just trolling, said Sir Silver, the third knight. You must wait for us. There's no time to wait, said Jack. Camelot is dying, said Annie. We have to hurry. Then you must take this, said Sir Galahad. He reached into the leather pouch that hung around his shoulder. He took out the silver cup. With trembling hands, a young knight gave a cup to Annie. Cup, he said. Take this too, said Sir Percival. He pulled a small wooden box from a bag that hung from his belt. He handed it to Jack. Jack opened the lid. In the middle of the box was a pointer with marking all around it. A compass, said Jack. And this, said Sir Lancelot. He took a silk scarf from around his neck. A glass key hung from the cord. A key, whispered Annie. Lancelot held the key to Annie. She and Jack looked at it closely. Then Annie hung it around her neck. When she turned back, all the knights were fast asleep. Sweet dreams, Annie said gently. You guys need a long nap. Jack and Annie stood up. I think we have all our gift now, Jack said, but I better make sure. He hurried to get his backpack. It was lying in the grass near the knight's swords. He pulled out his notebook and read the second rhyme. 4 gifts you will need. The first from me, then a cup, a compass, and finally a key. Great, said Annie. We've got a clock from the Christmas night and the other 3 gifts from them. This quest is really easy. Jack shook his head. It's not over yet, he said. We still have to find the cauldron with the water of memory and imagination. We'll find it, said Annie. Read the third rhyme. Jack looked in his notebook and read the third rhyme aloud. If you survive to complete your quest, the secret door lies to the west. No problem, said Annie. We survived the guard and the dance. Now the compass can show us how to go west, and the key will unlock the secret door and will fill the cup with water from the cauldron. See, it's all easy. Jack still felt worries. A little too easy, he thought. What are we waiting for? Said Annie. Let's go. Jack looked down at the compass. Okay, he said. The pointer pointed north, so west must be that way. He pointed left, toward the thick of bushes and small trees. Great, said Annie. Here, carry the cup in your pack. Jack put his notebook and the silver cup into his pack. Then he and Danny started into the thicket. They ducked under branches and pulled past bushes. Thorns grabbed their hands. Twigs snapped against their face. Jack kept checking a compass. Could they really be searching in the right place? He wondered. What kind of door would they found in the tangled thicket? Listen, said Annie. It's so quiet now. The thicket had grown eerily silent. No birds called from the bushes. No music could be heard in the distance. Jack checked the compass once more. It says we're still going west. He said, I just hope these things work. It works, Annie said softly. Look! Annie was holding back a leafy branch. She pointed to the rocky hillside beyond the thicket. Halfway up the hillside was a lounge. Between two giant boulders on the ledge was the shining glass door. Chapter 11. The Crystal Cave. The secret door, whispered Jack. Yes, said Annie. Jack dropped the compass into his pack. Then he and Annie scrambled through the bushes and climbed up the rock to the door. Annie took Sir Longclaw glass key from around her neck. She slipped the key into the keyhole. She turned the key slowly. Click. Yippee! Annie said softly. She pushed open the door. Beyond the door was a huge, glittering cave. The floor, wall, and ceiling were made of clear crystal. Jack and Annie stepped inside. The cave was filled with dancing streams of purple light. It's so bright, whispered Jack. Where's all the purple light coming from? There, said Annie. She pointed to the crack on the far side of the cave. Let's look. They crossed the cave and peered through the crack into the room. Along the brilliant crystal wall of the rooms were 4 doorways. In the far corner of the room was a fire. The fire blazed with the leaping purple flames. Over the flames hung the gleaming golden cauldron. There it is, whispered Jack. Wow, whispered Annie. The cauldron with the water of memory and imagination, whispered Jack. I know, whispered Annie. Let's go. They squeezed through the crack walked toward the gleaming cauldron. Jack reached into his pack and pulled out Sir Galahad's silver cup. The cauldron's too high, said Annie. We can't get to the water. Here, take this, said Jack, handing her the cup. Climb on my back. He bent over, and Annie climbed on piggyback. Jack stood up shakily. Hurry, he said. You're heavy. I can't reach it, said Annie. Move closer. Jack sluggered forward a few steps. Stretching as far as she could, Annie reached again. She skimmed water from the top of the bubbling cauldron, filling with silver cup. Got it, she whispered. Now set me down, slowly. Annie held the cup with both hands. Jack slowly bent his knees, and Annie climbed carefully off his back. They stared silently for a moment at the water of memory and imagination in the cup. It was clear and shimmering. Now we can save Morgan, said Annie. Just then, Jack smelled something strange. It was like a smell of rotten seaweed. He heard Will gurgling sounds behind them. He and Annie turned around. A giant slimy, mud-colored creature crawled out through one of the doorways. The creature was long and scarcely like a crocodile, but much, much bigger. It has wings that look as if they'd been spun from the thousand spider webs. It had glowing eyes, red eyes, and long curled claws. The creature opened its huge jaws. Strands of jewel dripped from its sharp, pointed teeth. The creature hissed and hot blue flames shot from its mouth. Another monster crawled through the different doorway, quickly followed by a third, then a fourth. "Yikes!" said Annie. "The real keeper of the cauldron," whispered Jack. Chapter 12. Fire with Fire. The four real keepers of the cauldron crawled close to Jack and Danny. Hissed and snoring blew fire. "What do we do now?" whispered Danny. "I don't know," said Jack. "We're trapped." "I have an idea," whispered Danny. "Let's drink water." "What?" said Jack. "It's a water of memory and imagination, right?" said Annie. "So maybe if we drink it, we can imagine a way to escape." "It's crazy," said Jack. The keeper crawled closer, snoring more blue flames and filling the air with their rotten stench. Okay, let's try it," said Jack. Annie took a sip from the silver cup, then handed it to Jack. His hands trembled as he held the cup to his lip and took a sip. The water tasted sweet, bitter, and spicy all at the same time. Jack gave the cup back to Annie. "Now imagine we're saved," she said. Jack closed his eyes. He tried to imagine being saved. He pictured the four keepers crawling back through the doorways. "Okay, ready to fight?" said Annie. Jack opened his eyes. "What? Fight?" Annie set the silver cup on the floor. "Now!" she said. Suddenly Jack felt like he'd been hit by a bolt of lightning. His fear slipped away. He was filled with strength and fury. Without thinking, he lunged with Annie toward the wood fire under the cauldron. They each grabbed two long, straight branches from the edge of the fire. They raised them high in the air. The branch blazed with purple fire like flaming swords. Ah! Jack and Danny shouted. The four keepers hissed louder than ever. Great balls of blue fire exploded from their mouths and nostrils. Jack and Danny slashed the air with their fiery weapon, jabbing at the keepers. They fought fire with fire, blue flames with purple flames. "Back, back!" they shouted. With each jab and shout, Jack felt stronger and braver. Waving their burning branches, he and Annie drove the keeper toward the walls. The keeper blue flames grew weaker and weaker as if they were running out of fuel. Finally, one by one, each keeper slunk back into the doorway from which it had come. When all the keepers had disappeared, Jack and Danny placed the burning branch in front of each of the four doorways to keep the monster from coming back out. Then they brushed off their hands. "Let's go," Annie said coolly. Jack nodded. Annie carefully picked up the silver cup of water from the cauldron. Then she and Jack squeezed through the narrow crack and strolled through the bright crystal cave. They stepped out of the daylight. The glass key was still in a keyhole. Jack calmly locked the door behind them. He handed the key to Annie. Then Jack's knees gave way. Then he sank to the ground. Chapter 13. Your horses are waiting. "I don't believe what just happened," said Jack. "What part don't you believe?" said Annie, holding the silver cup. Jack laughed and shook his head. "I don't believe any of it," he said. Annie laughed too. "That was cool, huh?" Jack pushed his glasses into place and stared at her. Seriously? What's just happening in there? He asked. I imagine us fighting the keeper with flaming swords, said Annie. What did you imagine? Jack shrugged. I just imagined the keeper going back in their hole, he said. Good, said Annie. We both got we imagined. Yeah, said Jack, smiling, but what you imagined made a much better story. A shriek of fury came from behind the cave. Yikes, said Annie. Let's get out of here, said Jack. He scrambled to his feet, and together they climbed back down over the big rock to the thicket. Annie moved very carefully to keep from spilling the water in a cup. When they came to the thicket, Jack pulled out Percival's compass. If we came west to get here, we have to go east to get back, he said. East is that way. As they started into the wild growth, Jack went first so he could clear the way for Annie. Talking, they pushed sadly through the trees and bushes, moving farther and farther from the keeper's cave. Finally, they heard the music in the distance. They walked closer and closer toward the sounds until they stepped back into the green glade. The winged dancers were still there, dancing in their music circle. Jack heard race. He wanted to join them again, but he knew what if he did, he would never escape their dance. Look, said Annie, the knights are awake. Sir Lancelot, Sir Galahad, and Sir Percival were standing just beyond the circle of dancers. They were blocking on their swords. Hi, called Annie. Guess what? We got it. The knight walked shakily toward Jack and Danny. They still looked thin and tired, but color had returned to their cheeks. We have a water of memory and imagination, said Annie. She held up the silver cup. The knight smiled. Now we just have to get it back to Camelot, said Jack. We would like to help you, said Sir Lancelot, but it seems we have lost our 3 horses. No, you hadn't, said Annie. Your horses are waiting for you. They're on the other side of the hill, said Jack. Jack and Danny led the knight over the hill. On their way, Jack picked up the red velvet cloak. When they came to the meadow, they saw the 3 horses. The horses kneed and sent her over to the knight. As Sir Lancelot stroked the mane of the black horse, he turned to Jack and Danny. You both ride back to Camelot with me, he said. Thanks, they said. Jack fastened the red cloak around his neck. Sir Lancelot held them onto the back of his horse, then climbed on himself. Annie sat behind Lancelot. She held on to the knight with her right hand. She held the silver cup in her left hand. Can you carry the water without spilling it? Jack asked her, worried. I'll try, she said. Sir Galahad mounted the brown horse. Then Sir Percival climbed on the grey horse. Then the 3 knights started through the pale green meadow. Careful, careful, Jack whispered to Annie. I got it, she said. When they came to the iron gate, the knights draw their swords. Open the gate, in the name of King Arthur of Camelot, Sir Lancelot called. Through his still sounded hoarse, the knight's deep voice carried an amazing strength. The iron gate slowly swung open. Sir Lancelot hurled his horse onward. The guard watched silently as the knight passed by them and started across the bridge. The 3 horses trod in single file over the wooden plank. Again, Jack was amazed by the difference between this wood and the other wood. Here it was dark and freezing and foggy. The red cloak flapped in the bitter winds. As the horses step off the bridge, they each neigh loudly. "Oh, wow," whispered Annie. Standing high on the rock in the scroll of fog was the white stage. Chapter 14. Return. The three knights gazed in wonder at the white stage. "Hey, take this," Annie said to Jack. She handed him the silver cup. Then she slipped off the back of Lancelot's horse and ran to the stage. "Thanks for coming for us," she cried, throwing her arms around his neck. The three knights look at Jack. That's the white stage," said Jack. "We brought us here." "Are you a wizard?" So Sir Percival asked in a hushed voice. "Just ordinary kids," said Jack, "but I know he's magic. We've got here from Camelot in no time at all. I guess he come to take us back." "Then you must go with him," said Sir Lancelot. "You will have a much faster journey, I can assure you." Sir Lancelot held the silver cup as Jack slipped down from the black horse. Then Jack took a cup and carefully climbed onto the back of the stage behind Annie. He held the cup with both hands as the stage stood up. "Tell King Arthur we will return to the Camelot before the first night of the new year," said Sir Lancelot. "Farewell, Jack and Annie," said Sir Galahad. Godspeed, said Sir Percival. "Same to you," said Annie. "Have a safe trip," said Jack. The knight smilingly bowed. The white stage blew out a puff of frosty air. Then he started down the mountainside. When the stage came to the base of the mountain, he took off again like the white Camelot. The red clock billowed around Jack and Danny, keeping them warm and safe. The stage dashed across the wintry field. He ran past quietly stable and thatched huts. He ran past flocks of sheep and herds of goats asleep in meadow. He leaped over frozen streams and stone walls. The stage ran on and on through the starry night until he brought Jack and Danny back to the dark castle grounds for Camelot. He walked over the frozen grass of the outer courtyard. He came to the house near the grove below the treehouse. He knelt in the grass, and Jack and Danny climbed off his back. Mr. Curly, the silver cup still gleams with water from the cauldron. Not a drop has spilled out. "We'll better leave the clock here," said Jack, "so I don't trip on it." Jack carefully set the cup on the ground. Annie helped him unbutton the red velvet clock around his neck. Then she draped it over the stage back. "To keep you warm and safe," she whispered to him, "and thanks for everything." "Yeah, thanks," said Jack. "Goodbye." The white stage stared at them with his mysterious and amber eyes. He nodded once, then he turned and headed into the darkness. Jack picked up the cup. "Come on," he said. He started walking quietly through the outer courtyard. "Careful, careful," said Annie. I got it," said Jack. They crossed the drawbridge into the inner courtyard of the castle. Then they pushed open the giant arched doors. The great hall was just as they had left it, dimly lit and freezing cold. King Arthur, Queen Governors, the Knight of the Round Table, and Morgan Le Fay were all still frozen and silent. "What do we do now?" said Jack. "Let's try putting a drop of water each of them." "Morgan first," said Annie. "Okay," said Jack. "Come on." Held his breath and kept his eyes on the cup. Jack walked carefully toward the table. Suddenly, his left foot stepped onto the shoelace of his right sneaker, and he tumbled. "Jack!" yelled Annie. Jack tried to regain his balance, but it was too late. As he fell to the floor, the silver cup slipped from his hands. Chapter 15. Christmas Magic. Jack and Danny watched in horror as the water from the cup splashed over the stone floor. It trickled into the crack between the stones and disappeared. Jack stumbled to the cup. He picked it up. It was completely empty. "Oh no," Jack moaned. He sat back and put his hands on his hands. "Camelot will never wake up now," he thought. "The legend will end forever." "Jack," said Annie, "look." Jack raised his head. He pushed his glasses into place. A golden cloud was rising from the crack between all the stone from the floor. The cloud spread quickly throughout the great hall, filling the room with wonderful smells, the scents of cedars, smoke, and evergreen, of roses and almonds. The clouds rose up and up, then wafted out through the upper window of the hall. Suddenly, a white dove flew through one of the windows. It soared across the room like a bright light, then scooped back into the night. Soft, gentle laughter came from the end of the hall. The laughter grew louder. Jack saw King Arthur and Queen Governors looking at one another. They were laughing. The Knight of the Round Table were laughing too. Best of all, and Jack saw Morgan Le Fay smiling at him and Annie. "Jack, Annie, come here," she called. She held out her hands. "Morgan!" cried Annie. She ran to Morgan and threw her arm around the entrance. Jack stood up, still holding the empty cup. He ran to Morgan and hugged her too. "We did what the Christmas night told us to do," said Annie. "We brought back the water of memory and imagination." "But I dropped the cup," said Jack, "and it spilled all the water." "But the water made a gold cloud," said Annie, "and everyone came back to life." Morgan laughed with amazement. "You have just returned from the other world?" she asked. "Yes," said Annie. "A white stage brought us back," said Jack. He turned to King Arthur. "Your Majesty," he said, "we have good news. Your knights are safe. King Sir Lancelot said to tell you they'll be home before the first night of the new year." The king looked bewildered. "You found them?" "Yes, and they're all fine," said Annie. "Here," said Jack. He handed the silver cup to the king. "Please give this back to Sir Galahad. And this is to Sir Lancelot," said Annie. She took the glass key from around her neck and gave it to Arthur. Oh, and this is to Sir Percival," said Jack. He pulled the wooden compass box from his pack and gave it to the king. At first, King Arthur was too stunned to speak. Then he clapped his hands and laughed joyfully. "Thank you," he said to Jack and Danny. The Knight of the Round Table all cheered. "Ring the bell," King Arthur shouted. "Call the people of Camelot to the castle. They have already gathered outside the door, Your Majesty," said the page. "Bring them in," said King Arthur. "We must rejoice together." Queen Governor smiled at Jack and Danny. Her eyes sparkled now. "Once again, you have helped save Camelot," she said. "Thank you very much." "You're welcome," said Jack and Danny together. Then Jack heard the sounds of the children talking and laughing. He turned to see the crowd of people streaming through the arched doorway of the great hall. They carried candles, a giant fir tree, and wreaths of holly and pines. Magician followed them with stringed instruments. As everyone started to decorate the hall, the magician began playing and singing beautiful Christmas carol. Jack, said Annie, look. The white stage was standing in the arched doorway. Jack turned excitedly to Morgan. See that? Stage, he said. He took us to the other world. See him? Morgan smiled. Yes, I do see him, she said. And now I see everything. Jack looked back at the doorway. The stage was gone. In the place stood an old man with a long white beard. He held a staff and wore a flying red cloak, the same cloak Jack and Danny had worn on their quest. That, Jack asked. That is Merlin the magician, said Morgan. It was Merlin who invited you here. I see that now. Merlin, said Jack. He sent us the royal invitation? Yes, said Morgan. Then he put the rest of us under a spell and carried you to the other world. No, said Annie. The Christmas night put you under the spell. And the white stage carried us to the other world, said Jack. Morgan smiled. Merlin was both the Christmas night and the white stage, she said. Remember, he's the magician, not mortal. He can change his shape whenever he wishes. Oh, wow, whispered Annie. Why did Merlin do these things? asked Jack. Merlin was angry when King Arthur banished magic from Camelot, said Morgan. I see now he finally took matters into his own hands. How? Said Jack. He knew King Arthur would send no more knights to the other world for the water of memory and imagination, said Morgan. So I assume he brought you to Camelot, hoping that you would offer to go instead. Why did he want us to go? Asked Annie. Merlin has often heard my tale of your adventures in the treehouse, said Morgan. He knows you both have a great desire and figure and fight for the good. And he knows you use the gift of imagination very well. These are two special qualities needed to success in any quest. Jack and Danny looked back at Merlin. From far across the room, the white-bearded magician smiled at them. He raised his staff. Then he slipped out the door. Jack looked around the great hall. All the candles and torches were lit now. The fire blazed in the hearth. The magicians were playing. Everyone was singing. The room glowed with a warm firelight and a rosy face. At last, Christmas in Camelot was just as Jack had imagined it would be. The spell of the dark wizard had been broken. The great hall was filled with beauty and love and joy and light. Chapter 16. Welcome home. Wake up, Jack, said Annie. Jack opened his eyes. He was lying in the dark on the wooden floor of the treehouse. Through the window, he saw the cloudy sky above the Frog Creek woods. Time to go home, said Annie. Oh, I must have fallen asleep, said Jack. I had a most incredible dream. I dreamed that we went to Camelot. It was Christmas and Merlin. It wasn't a dream, said Annie. It was real. You fell asleep at the round table during a party. King Arthur carried you to the treehouse and then made a wish for us to come home. Jack sat up. Seriously? He whispered. Seriously, she said. Jack, Annie, their mom called in the distance. Coming! Annie shouted out the treehouse window. She turned to Jack. Let's go. Seriously? It really happened? Jack and Danny again. Yes, really, she said. She held up the royal invitation. See? Proof. Oh, yeah, he whispered. This time the letter M stood for Merlin, not Morgan, said Annie. Jack smiled. Thanks, Merlin, he said softly. Jack picked up his backpack. Then he and Danny started down the rope ladder and headed home. As they walked through the deep December twilight, snowflakes started to fall. By the time they left the woods and headed down their streets, snow was rolling everywhere. Ahead they could see their house glowing with lamplight. Their mom was waiting on their front porch. Hi, Mom, said Annie. Hi, Dad. Hi, Mom, said Jack. Hi, kids. Did you have a good day? She asked. Yeah, said Jack. Pretty good, said Annie. I'm glad, said their mom. Welcome home. She held the door open, and Jack and Danny slipped inside. Their house felt extra warm and cozy. Good smell came from the kitchen. Jack and Danny took off their snow-covered jacket, then headed up the stairs. In the hallway, Annie turned to Jack. Merry Christmas, she said simply. Merry Christmas, he said. Annie slipped into her room, and Jack into his. Jack closed his door and sat on his bed. He took his notebook out of his pack and opened it. His spirit sank, except for the 3 rhymes. He had taken no notes on their journey, not one. Exhausted, Jack lay back on his bed. He squeezed his eyes shut. He tried to remember the detail of their adventure in Camelot and the other world. He could feel the terrible chill in the great hall when Morgan was frozen. He could hear the joyful music as the winged dancer danced around in their circle. He could taste the sweet, bitter, spicy taste of the water of memory and imagination. Jack sat up. All at once he felt very awake. He turned to the clean page in his notebook. He grabbed his pencil and wrote, It all started when we saw the white dove in the twilight. Using his memory and imagination, Jack kept writing, doing his part, and kept the legend of King Arthur, the Knight of the Round Table, Merlin, and Morgan Le Fay alive. As the snow rolled outside his window, Jack wrote and wrote and wrote. He didn't stop writing until he had written down the whole story, his story of their Christmas in Camelot.